Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's less than a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do, and we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where, how. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Dee. Well, we should tell people that we started recording. I'm like, wait, I don't have my microphone on. So we had to stop. And then you say, wait, I don't have my microphone on.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's wrong with us. Well, I know what's wrong with me, but...
Well, I know what's wrong with you. Gosh, Dee, we're going to have to talk about the ugly right off. What happened in Oklahoma last week?
Well, it's not been on the news at all, the national news, but Oklahoma got hit with the mother of all ice storms. All the trees still had leaves on them because, hell, it was just barely fall. And it just has taken us down a very icy path. So I have tree limbs everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. And on top of that, we haven't had any power, some of us for 8 days. I lost mine 7 days ago. And at one point, there were 388,000 customers in Oklahoma without electricity.
That's amazing. You said you saw some power company trucks from Indiana to the rescue?
I did. We have power companies from all around the surrounding states, and Ohio and Indiana came and helped us too. And I just want to say thank you to all the people. I know people are frustrated, but thank you to everybody at the Oklahoma Electric Cooperatives, OG&E, Edmond Electric, all the different power companies that power Oklahoma. They have been busting their tails to get us all back up. It's just when you have that many people down and that much ice, they had the stats. I think I shared them on Facebook. I was shocked at the stats. The good news is, well, I'm going to start with the bad news. The bad news is my back garden has gigantic limbs in it, and the shade part of that garden may not be shady in the spring. We're about to find out, and I'm just going to take it day by day. And then I may need to move some shade plants or do something different. And my blown glass, you know that blown glass that sits in the back of my garden? It's a big part of the garden.
I've seen pictures, yes.
Well, it's underneath a tree, and I think it's not broken, but I'll be honest, I can't tell. So,
well, once you carefully watch you lift that limb off and then knock into it and break it then. But that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen. What I'm going to have to do to get that limb off is I'm going to have to saw it up into smaller pieces and then save it for firewood. And it's not just one limb, people. It's that tree lost most of itself. So it's on both sides of that fence, and it'll be interesting to see. So my greenhouse is fine. People have asked me about that. It sits out in the sun, which is where you want a greenhouse. And then I couldn't water my cuttings for several days, and some of them bit it. But in the great scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. And we got the limbs off of the front lawn, the front part of so that's about a third of what we've got to do. And we've got word out to some companies, but, arborists are busy right now. The whole state looks like my yard.
I Googled something for you, Dee.
Yes?
I Googled, how many limbs can a tree lose and still live?
Interesting. How many?
I didn't get a clear answer.
Yeah, I think it depends on the size of the tree and how old it is.
Yep.
And I think most of my trees are going to live. I lost the Rising Sun redbud, though, that was next to the driveway.
Uh-huh. And
it died. I mean, it got split. So
I thought of you, too, because I started watching this program online about the servant class of Great Britain and how before World War I and then during World War I and after, the whole landscape changed as far as servants and people wanting to go into service. They didn't. And then how poorly these women were treated. And you're like, what does this have to do with my storm? Well, that led me to a video about the Edwardian homes after the turn of the century when they got electricity.
Yes.
And electricity wasn't regulated. And so people were like shocking themselves right and left and dying because their house was not wired properly. And so anyway, I thought maybe I should send this to Dee to say, and I thought better of it. Because compared to Dee, life is pretty nice here. My autumn crocuses are in full bloom, and I noticed that they have increased considerably in number. And I'm going to write a blog post about that. It makes me very happy. So they're spreading out.
Neat.
We had mostly rain and yuck all week, so I didn't get my zinnias pulled out, which was my garden commission, but the rest of the week's going to be like low 60s and sunny, so I intend to really finish things up. Anyway, it was a good week here, but I didn't have an ice storm.
And then didn't you also get some bulbs?
I did. I got some Corylus bulbs that I had ordered last spring when you and I talked about those, and then I got all excited about them.
Yeah.
So I ordered the 4 varieties that Brent and Becky's bulbs had, and they arrived last week, and they are planted. I had a really nice note from Brent or Becky. I think it was from Becky that said, happy Corydalysis or whatever. Anyway,
how nice. I love Becky and I love Brent. Yeah. They're the nicest people. They really are. I ordered some bulbs from them this year too. I do want people to know that I have a generator, so they aren't worrying about me. I do have light, and I'm recording this at home. So I have light. I just don't have, and my freezers are going, and importantly, my well is going, because in the country, you have a well, it's powered by electricity. And so for the first few days, we didn't have water or anything. So now we've got water, hot water. We just don't have heat. And so it's all good. We're going to be fine. I see we have a beautiful quote. It's one of my favorites.
We do. The quote is, "A bit of fragrance always clings to the hand that gives roses. If you are generous, you will gain everything." From Confucius.
And for our flower this week, we decided to actually talk about a book. And the book is one that you and I both read last, when was it? Last spring. It's called The Sensual Garden, Exploring the World of Botanical Plants. And it's by Ken Drews. And then the botanical photographs, which are extraordinary, are by Ellen Hoverkamp. And we just I wanted to talk about it because it's all about scent in the garden. And I think that's something that people don't spend a lot of time thinking about in the world. And scent in a garden is more important than anything else, I think, personally. That's just me.
So scent is the thing that they say brings up memories faster than any other sense. So you can smell like a particular brand of perfume, and it might remind you of your mother, because that's the perfume she always wore.
Sure.
Because like my mom always wore White Shoulders perfume, so that is her scent when I smell that anywhere, because you can still buy it. Or Lily of the Valley takes you back to me picking them as a child. Sweet peas.
Lily of the Valley, sweet peas, roses. I'm trying to think of some other things, but I haven't slept in 7 days. All of these highly scented plants, for a long time, hybridizers were working hard to get form and size and shape, and they're still trying to do that with plants. But we've rediscovered that certain scents, so they did this at the expense of scent. Because a lot of times, especially with roses, some of the qualities that make a rose more disease resistant seem to take all the scent out of it. In the last few years, they've worked hard to get that back, at least the tea scent. And my kids, I had them all smell roses as children, and I suspect that they will think that roses remind them of me. But even just your garden in general, which is part of what this book is about, throughout the seasons, you have different scents. Like before the ice storm, Megan, my daughter, was out in the garden with the baby, with my grandbaby, and we were walking, and she said, "Mom, it just smells so good out here."
Anybody who's ever played in a pile of leaves knows that scent of decaying leaves. And so that always just takes me right back to my childhood and helping to rake leaves and being outside in the fall. And that was back when you could burn leaves. And even the smell of burning leaves isn't that bad. I know that's a bad thing to do now, but...
out here in the boondocks, we still burn leaves, but occasionally. The truth is we don't burn them a lot, but this year we will because there's just so many of them. We'll never get them all. There's no way they'll all decay because they were all green when they fell. We hadn't even turned color yet. And so a lot of them are still attached to the trees. The brand, when people burn their brush piles, I have a brush pile that's the size of my house.
Don't burn it all at once, Dee.
We will not burn it all at once. And we will bring out a water truck when we burn part of it. Part of it I'm going to chip. If the arborist, if he's able to get out here, I'm going to have it chipped, and I'll probably have chips the size of my house. But back to scent. Lilacs are a wonderful scent.
They are a wonderful scent. That lilac is the scent of spring, and it evokes the Mother's Day for those of us who can grow lilacs.
Me and you.
Me.
We can both grow lilacs. And different lilacs smell different. It depends on which type you have. And then you were going to include marigolds.
Yes, I was going to include marigolds because some people don't like the scent of marigolds.
I kind of like them.
I do too. I mean, to me, it's sort of a spicy scent, I guess you would describe it.
Spicy and menthol maybe mixed together. And I've noticed that a lot of native plants in Oklahoma have a lot of scent too. So we wanted to tell you guys about this book. It's a great big coffee table book. It would make a nice Christmas present for someone.
Right. That's The Central Garden, Exploring the World of Botanical Plants. Ken Drew's Botanical Photographs by Ellen Hoverkamp. And Ellen Hoverkamp. We will put a link to this so that if anybody wants to get it, they can. So to transition from flowers to vegetables, what scent do you think of with the vegetable garden?
Oh, I think of tomatoes for sure.
Yes.
Tomatoes definitely have their own scent. And I'm a little bit allergic to the tomato plant itself. And I have to wear gloves when I'm, in them doing stuff. I am. I'm actually a little bit allergic to it.
I'm like, what?
I know. She's making a face.
Even those little seedlings, when you plant your little seedlings in the spring and then you pinch out extra, those have that tomato smell.
Right. They have that tomato scent. Yeah, those don't bother me. It's when they get to be big, giant vines and I'm still pinching out those suckers, then I have to wear, because they make my hands itch. I know. I'm pathetic. I have issues.
Smell my hands after I pricked out those little seedlings and that's the smell of summertime.
You know what else I think of is potatoes. I think potatoes definitely, when you dig them up, there's a real scent to the potatoes and the tubers. But both of these are in the nightshade family, so that makes sense.
I don't think I've ever thought about the tomato scent.
You mean the potato scent?
Yeah, the potato scent. Did I say tomato?
You did, but that's okay.
You say tomato, I say potato. You say potato, I say tomato.
Something like that. Okay, so you got our quote?
I do. This quote is, "Our vegetable garden is coming along well with radishes and beans up, and we are less worried about revolution than we used to be." By E.B. White.
Oh, that's funny. This is going to come out on is it the day after? Yeah, the day after we vote.
Yeah.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah, we're recording on Monday. The podcast publishes early Wednesday morning. And, the thing to remember is we're still going to plant our vegetable gardens in the spring.
That's right, we are. And green beans have a scent too. But vegetables are wonderful, and we're going to try to figure out exactly how many we're going to grow. And we'll do all of that this winter when we've got some time to think about it.
Right. Right now it's all about, getting the limbs cleaned up. I just got to get my regular garden stuff cleaned up. But that reminds me that we got this book called Welcome to the Agrihood.
Yes.
And we were going to talk about this a little bit. It's by Anne, and I think it's DeSimone.
No, I think it's DeSimone.
Mm-hmm. But this book is about housing, shopping, and gardening for a farm-to-table lifestyle. And it's kind of interesting because she talks about very local food, saying hello to your local farmer, what urban agriculture looks like. And then she talks about this concept of agrihoods. And agrihoods are instead of the housing development being built around a golf course, for example, it's built around an agricultural area where they grow the food and everything that then the neighbors can buy.
I featured
And,
these in my book too in 2014 because I was fascinated by this concept. There are some in Texas and there's actually some in Oklahoma. And doesn't she also talk about CSA programs too?
She talks about community sustained agriculture programs. But in Oklahoma, and I looked it up for you, Dee.
In Eufaula.
Eufaula. There's one that she lists. And then in Indiana, there's one way up in Michigan City, Indiana, which is up by Lake Michigan and not too far from the Lake Michigan beaches and really not too far from Chicago. But she said this Tryon Farm, it's called. They have workshops on things like beekeeping, habit restoration, and fish stocking.
Habit or habitat restoration?
Habitat. Did I say habit? I meant habit.
Yes, and I just want to make sure for clear for everybody.
There
Okay,
you go.
so the one in Eufaula, does it have a name? Did you look up its name?
Yeah, I did look up its name. I'm going to look it up for you again. It's called
I'll
Carlton Landing.
Carlton Landing. Okay, well, that's interesting because Eufaula is down by Lake Eufaula, and it's in the southeastern part of the state.
Right. It's actually Lake Eufaula, she says.
Well, yeah, because it says landing in the name. And so the word landing tells me it's right off the lake because a landing is usually where you put in your boat. And that's a lot of the terminology that's used down in Eufaula. I used to camp down there. That's another whole story.
Right.
But, okay, well, when you get to CSA programs, there's somebody I want to promote in Oklahoma City.
Okay, but wait a minute. So it says plans call for more than 3,000 homes and a private residence club. Residents can choose from a wide range of home styles and sizes. The farm is the centerpiece of the agricultural neighborhood and the heart of Carlton Landing's sustainable community. The town farmer delivers fresh produce to residents and guests through the farmer's market and farm-to-table menus at the town center restaurants. The CSA program enables residents to acquire farm shares and receive a steady delivery of seasonal food, herbs, and flowers.
Boy, that's impressive. I didn't know anything about that. That's cool.
This book lists all the agrihoods in the country by state.
Very cool. So people can look theirs up.
All the community supported agriculture programs by state and the on-farm markets, not where you can go to a farm and they actually have a market. And
that's become very popular here.
Yeah. Some of them are orchards. But a lot of the orchards around here also grow vegetables. And then they have farm hubs, which are sort of like places, and they're often, she says, in areas that are underserved by agricultural fresh produce, where they bring the farmers all kind of get together and bring the food there, which is sort of like a farmer's market.
Right.
It's more year round.
But more specifically to food deserts, which are like urban city neighborhoods and stuff like that, where there are no grocery stores. There's no way to really get good fresh food.
Although, it's kind of interesting. There's no food hub in Indianapolis, which would be where the food deserts.
But you guys do have this big, there's a big community garden in Indianapolis. We visited it when we were there.
There is.
Downtown. Yeah.
There is.
That's cool. So can I give a plug to my friend who has a CSA?
Well, let me get to that page so I can see if they're listed.
I wonder if she's listed.
I'm going to tell you in a minute when you tell me the name. Okay, go.
Okay, so her name is Kamala Gamble, and it's in the Nichols Hills area, and it is a CSA and a farm, an urban farm.
What's it called?
I'm trying to remember what she calls it now. Her company is Cam's Cookery, and it's spelled with a K.
It's in there.
It is?
CamsCookery.com.
Guilford Gardens, yeah. Because her name is Kamala Guilford. And it's over in the Nichols Hills area. And it's really funny because you don't know this, but the Nichols Hills area is real rich and pricey, old homes, like old money. And on the edge of it, though, there were a lot of Kamala had a home there. And it's on the edge of Nichols Hills. And in that area, there were a lot of houses not doing well. And so she kept buying them up. And so I think she's actually considered part of either the Village or Oklahoma City, but she has a giant farm
Really?
And it's right next to Nichols Hills. And some of the people love it because, they can get fresh food from her. Other people wish she didn't have a farm right next door, but I think it's really cool. And I like Cam a lot. She's just one of the nicest people ever. And she would tell you that there's no way she can farm it all by herself. She has lots of good friends and employees who help her with it. And she runs a CSA. She also, I don't know if she's still doing it during COVID, but she also had cooking classes at her house, which I've been to. We actually visited her farm when GardenCom came to Oklahoma. And I didn't know Cam then, and we've gotten to know each other a lot better. I've featured her in an article I did for Oklahoma Gardener. And that's just one person I know who has a CSA. There are some other, there's Focus Farms, which they just sold their CSA, I think, to the Oklahoma Co-op. So we've got a lot of, and Focus is spelled PHOCAS, but it's now part of the Oklahoma Food Cooperative.
Yeah, I don't see that one, but I'm not looking closely. They have an outlet right down the street from me. So anything I don't grow, I can just run down to the co-op and get food that's in season. Of course, now we're in winter and we had an ice storm, but we don't want to talk about that. That is one cool book. So this is Welcome to the Agrihood, Housing, Shopping, and Gardening for a Farm-to-Table Lifestyle. I was going to say, she also has a little bit in here about growing food, and if you want to grow it, and then selling, and aquaponics, permaculture. It's just a little reference book, and she's actually a nationally recognized author in the housing finance industry, it says. And the book won a Pinnacle Book Achievement Award. So that's Welcome to the Agrihood.
That is really cool. So our next quote is, Paige Dickey's quiet and contemplative journey should be required reading for anyone seeking the courage to begin again or the inspiration to live within the spirit possessed by the land. That's by Daniel J. Hinckley, who just calls himself a gardener and plant explorer. He's so much more than that. But we talked about Paige's book last week, right?
Last week or the week before, we talked about Uprooted, A Gardener Reflects on Beginning Again by Paige Dickey. And so you were so effusively happy with this book that I got it, and I got a review copy as well. And I've been reading it, and I am like 2 chapters away from finishing it. And the thing that struck me about this book, Dee, is this book is probably the book that comforts you when you didn't even know you need comforting about your changing garden.
Yeah, it did. And I didn't get a review copy of this one. I actually bought it because our friend, Marianne Newcomer, talked about it in Country Gardening magazine, which no longer exists, but it was part of her reviews last time. And I had read about it, and I ordered it while we were on vacation, and I devoured it. And yes, it made me feel better. Why do you think it made me feel better?
I think it made you feel better because there's something about when people think about getting older, which every single person does.
Unless they die young.
I was at the beginning of this I'm older now than I was at the beginning of this podcast, for example.
True.
And she went to change out her garden. She didn't look for like a little condo so she could have like a little 4x8 patch. I mean, she found another property, and it's just the way the property is, it's less intensive than her previous property. But she's still out there doing stuff and still out there exploring and learning. And I was also impressed that even though they thought they didn't want a greenhouse in their new place because they had one in the old place, they broke down and got a greenhouse because they enjoyed it.
And her husband loved it.
And her husband, and he's like a few years older than she is. He's like 80 or something. And it's like, go get a greenhouse if that's what you want to do at that age. Doesn't matter if you're going to use it for a year or 10 years, or maybe you'll be blessed with 20 years. Do it.
My friend Denise Whitehead, who you don't know, but she's a good friend that's local, she is buying a greenhouse for the first time in her life. And I think please forgive me, Denise, if I get your age wrong, but I think she's 64. And she came to me because I have a greenhouse, and she said, come over and help me with ordering this. And so we sat down and talked about siding and all that kind of stuff. So her attitude was COVID made her realize that for the time she has on the earth, she wanted to spend it puttering in a greenhouse, and sitting and reading and not being depressed this winter. And I thought, well, that's a good reason. Those are all good reasons. Good reason. Mine's too small to do that, but
Well, and that's why Paige's book, I think it's just the right time for a book like this.
I do too. And I think everybody should read it, whether you're a gardener or not, because it'll give you hope. I have one more thing to say about it, and I hope we're not running out of time. I haven't looked at our time thing.
We're good.
We're good. Okay. So when we first started to clean up the limbs, we just had to get our driveway open. Okay. And so in the back garden's a mess. And I don't cuss on this podcast. But just imagine me cursing. So I went out there with my son, and my spice bush tree, which I have 3 of them now. I have 2 that are on the border next to the house, but I have one in that shade garden I was telling you about.
Right.
It was covered by these huge limbs. I mean, just covered. And I stood there with my son and I said, we've got to get these limbs off the spice bush. And he was like, Mom, it's not that important. And I said, it is so important to me, son. And here's why. That spice bush, which is a native shrub to Oklahoma, and I suspect they have them in Indiana too, but maybe not. They do. They do? Okay. That spice bush blooms before anything else in my garden in spring. It is the first thing I see and kind of the last thing I see, because it blooms really early in spring, and then in the fall, it turns this gorgeous screaming yellow. And I just knew that if that got broken, I was going to have to try to rehab it as quickly as possible, because I figured it would come back because it's a native. Well, you know what? We pulled all those limbs off of there and busted our tails, and we got that spice bush. It sprung right back to life. Now, contrast that with a very expensive, sweet little Japanese maple that was kind of right next to it in the garden. It got smashed and it's going to die. I'm going to have to dig it out. Luckily, it's a very small one, so I can put another one there again once I see if I'm going to have enough shade. But do you see my point?
I do.
You do? Yeah.
The beacon of spring is still there, and it will be there in the spring.
Right. And it'll make me feel better because I will see it. Even if the rest of the garden changes, I'll see it. And I'm also going to make a plea to people when they in Oklahoma, when they start to replace precious things that died, think about some natives. In fact, I may not put a Japanese maple in that spot again. I may put another native shrub instead. I've got a lot of native shrubs now, but I'm thinking I might even put another spice bush there because I love them so much and they are just so pretty, and I'm trying to encourage spice bush swallowtails. It's just something to think about when you're going back and replacing plants, because all my friends have been texting me the past week going, can I save this tree? And they're little trees, specimen trees. Right. I'm like,
and
no.
Going back to that book very quickly, Paige talks about how she, and I forget exactly the plant, but she planted a non-native flower in her wooded area and then realized she had brought in an invasive with it.
And boy, so she dug it out quickly.
So now she's really thinking about, what do I plant where? And so it is a plea for more natives, especially if you have naturalized areas already in your yard, a plea for more natives in a very nice way.
Yeah, she's a lovely, lovely writer. Yes.
Ready?
You do this one.
Cares Melt When You Kneel in Your Garden by Okakura Kakuzo. I just thought that was nice.
You sent this to me yesterday.
I did.
She texted this to me.
I said, you will like this scent. Or scent. I'm thinking about scent again because that's our dirt.
Yes.
So I found this article. Dee, I want you to hang on. Plants can smell other plants.
Really?
Yeah. They don't have noses, but they can smell. And so I'm going to link to this NPR article. It says, this one does, then strangles what it smells. It says, do plants smell other plants? This one does, then strangles what it smells. And it talks about a very horrible thing called dodder vine, which is a parasite.
Oh, it's a terrible plant.
It does strangle. And so they did all these experiments, and the dodder vine was able to figure out what was a fake plant and what was a real plant and go towards the real plant and then kill it.
Yeah. Do you have dodder vine where you live?
I have seen it maybe once, and I pulled it out and
Yeah.
threw it in the trash.
I have never seen it here, thank goodness. It's terrible. Some
is.
people have it really badly, and it'll strangle anything nearby.
Right. So, but the point is, daughter can smell.
Well, that's creepy.
It is creepy. Maybe we should have had it last week for Halloween. Okay, that was our dirt. Plants can smell. That had to go. I found something that went along with scent.
Okay.
So,
that's good. I'm glad you did. And then this is just full of quotes today.
one last quote. Do our garden commission, and then we got to bug out of here.
Because we talked too long. I talked too long. When life feels too big to handle, go outside. Everything looks smaller when you're standing under the sky. L.R. Nost. It might be Nost. K-N-O-S-T. That's funny because you sent me that one too this week. Because I've been sending pictures to Carol because she's not on social media. So I've been sending her pictures that I've also shared on Facebook of, the cleanup.
Right.
And she's like, just go out there and look under the sky. And I got to tell you, the sky was beautiful yesterday. It was the most gorgeous blue, and it is today too.
It is. So let's quickly do our garden commissions. I did not finish digging out all the zinnias. That will be done because the weather will be nice. I'm going to cover up the bases of my figs. And so by the time I get to the end of the week, that vegetable garden area will be buttoned down and ready for winter. What's your commission? Let me guess. I'm going to cut tree branches.
I might actually go down in that back garden and I have a chainsaw that we've talked about before, a little DeWalt chainsaw, and it's battery operated, but it's really strong. And I might go out there and at least get, salvage my glass from underneath that giant limb.
There you go. That's
and just
enough.
See if it's all there. That's all I can do. That's all I can promise.
That's right.
I don't even have my bulbs yet.
Anyway, we want to thank everyone for listening to The Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others, and we would love that.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission, and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye.